remember that medicine today is the third leading cause of death. And this has been studied. There's very valid, very solid research studies that have shown this. Number one is heart disease. And then we have, so that number one, and then we have number two, which is cancer. And then again, number three, which is medications. So the irony here is that if a man has heart disease, if a man has cancer, generally what's going to happen is they're going to get prescribed medications. And so you look at the medications and you say, well, if medications are the third leading cause of death, so where are we going wrong? What did we do wrong here? What approach do we need to, how do we need to do this differently? Especially knowing that cancer is largely diet and environmental. So all the changes we've talked about, eating real food, mitigating chemical exposures, etc., are important as reducing your relative risk of developing, or your actual risk of developing cancer over a lifetime, as well as heart disease. Heart disease is predominantly diet. And so you look at some of the medicines. The statins are very commonly prescribed. The blood pressure medications, very commonly prescribed. The diabetes, which is associated with the heart disease, very commonly prescribed. Like, these are big ones, right? And if you look at the side effects of these medications on your husbands, you know, what are you going to get with a statin? You're going to get CoQ10, vitamin D, depletion. Same thing with blood pressure meds, by the way. So we'd actually put kind of both of these in this category of CoQ10 and vitamin D deficiency. But then with blood pressure medicines, you also get B vitamin deficiencies. You get magnesium, zinc, calcium deficiencies. You know, what did we say earlier? You need magnesium and zinc to make testosterone. Well, you need CoQ10 to build muscle and to maintain muscle energy. You need vitamin D to maintain muscle and to maintain mineral balance. And so what happens is, you know, your husband, you know, develops one of these conditions, like heart disease, again, which is mostly more, again, common in men. So it starts with weight gain. Weight gain leads to high blood pressure. The high blood pressure leads to increased risk for heart disease. Doctor checks your husband's cholesterol. Oh, got to put him on statins. We're going to put him on blood pressure medicine. And by the way, your blood sugar's up a little bit too high here, and so now we're going to put you on diabetic medication. Diabetic medication causes CoQ10, folate, and vitamin B12 deficiency. You know, again, this trifecta right here actually causes heart disease. So when you're deficient in these nutrients, it actually increases the risk for heart disease, congestive heart failure, high blood pressure, etc. So again, we're justifying the use of these medications to treat these illnesses, and the very medicines that are being used to treat the illnesses are the third leading cause of death. And this is so common for men. And men generally have great trust in their doctors because men are fix-it kind of guys. And so when they go to the doctor, usually they have to be forced, right? Usually men will stoically go through their life without going to the doctor. They could have an arm falling off of their body and they still don't want to go to the doctor. And usually it's their wives that drag them into the doctor out of fear for some of these different types of medical conditions. But this is where you have to be careful, because if you get into this polypharmacy trap where, you know, again, where your man's diet is bad, his exercise is not part of his priority, his growth is not part of his priority, he's not looking at the world in a logical and solid way around his diet and lifestyle choices, and so he becomes sick as a result of that, and then the medicines are given as a result of that, and then the nutritional deficiencies follow as a result of that, and then those nutritional deficiencies lead to increased risk of the very diseases he's being treated for in the first place. So again, it's a trap, it's a trick. And so, you know, this is also true of other medicines. So you got antacids, which cause mineral deficiencies. You know, it's common. Men will eat bad food and complain about heartburn, and then they'll pop Tums, Rolaids, or take Protonics, or, you know, go to their doctor or get prescribed Nexium or something like that. Painkillers, huge problem. I mean, just aspirin alone kills about 12,000 people a year. And when you add opiates and other painkillers to that list, I think it was Thomas Friedman, don't quote me, I think that's who it was, of the FDA, that said that we've never seen in the history of medical prescription that a drug being prescribed so frequently that so easily and readily is causing death. Painkillers. If you haven't seen Dope Sick, it's a great documentary. You can also read the book if you like to read books. It's called Dope Sick. It talks about the opioid crisis in the United States. But these are huge issues that men are facing, because again, when their bodies deteriorate, they're going to have pain, they're going to have arthritis, and they're going to want to grab this. And the commercials on TV, you watch the nightly news. I don't personally, but if you turn it on, every other commercial's about something on this list. And so there's a huge influence that your husband may be under, especially if he is partaking in that nightly news. Again, I think it was 80-90% of the pharmaceutical of the media's revenue comes from pharmaceutical ads directly off of the news. So again, a lot of influence there if your husband's a news junkie. So, and then again, antidepressants, because if he's not growing, remember what we talked about earlier, psychologically, emotionally, depression can be one of the side effects, and so antidepressants and stimulants are sometimes also used so that he can perform better at work, right? So for work performance enhancement, these drugs cause B vitamin deficiencies, and they also put the adrenal glands under tremendous pressure to produce stress hormone. And so multiply that over years, and what you end up having is a man whose ability to tolerate and handle stress deteriorates at a much more rapid rate, and so it dwindles him and makes him less than what he could be. It makes him less than he could potentialize. So I want to talk next about some of the subtle symptoms. So these are things that you want to look out for. If these things are happening to your man, it's time to sit down and probably have a conversation, a loving conversation about your concern. So one would be being overly fatigued. A man should not get home from work and come home from work and be tired and cranky. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying a man can't come home sometimes and be tired and cranky because he's had a bad day. That happens. But if this is happening repetitively and it's new, this is something you want to be on the lookout for, especially going back to the different medications, especially if he started a new medication. Probably, arguably, in my experience anyway, the big one here is this. The second big one is this one. So if we're talking about chronic fatigue, again, for fatigue, these two are huge. And so if your husband or man has been put on one of those recently and now he's overly fatigued, tired all the time, you got to pay attention to that, because that could just very well be the medicines that are, again, they're robbing his nutrients. Then you have reduced focus. And I see this a lot in men. They actually come to me, and the reason they're coming to me is because they can't get through their day without focusing. They can't get through their day without the way they could function. And it's because they can't focus on tasks or complete tasks that are required of them. And so this is part of, again, what I was talking about earlier, is this a lot of times where they get put on stimulants as a solution to that. But what really should happen, and this is true of any of these symptoms, what should you do? What should you encourage your husbands to do should they're struggling in these ways? Nutritional testing. This is where I would start. Now, if we're talking about visiting doctors, okay, if we're talking about encouraging to do other things, I would encourage them to eat real food. I would encourage them to cut out sugar and alcohol. I would encourage them to go to bed on time and to start exercising, to get sunshine. Fundamental things. We've talked about, the 6 crucial fundamentals that are not negotiable for good health, and that being the right diet, the right amount of sleep, the right amount of exercise, the right amount of sunshine, clean air, and clean water. Those 6 things are free. You're going to buy food anyway, so those 6 things are free as far as what you're currently doing. They're just lifestyle adjustments. But beyond that, let's say you're beyond that and your husband has made those lifestyle adjustments, now you got to go here, because it's very possible he's malnourished. And nutritional deficiencies can account for a lot of these different types of symptoms in men, especially B vitamins and nutrients like CoQ10 can really, really drag a man down over time. So getting that tested might be very, very helpful so that he can either accommodate his diet by eating more foods that contain those nutrients or by even potentially supplementing. Okay, mentally disengaged. Again, in reduced focus, mentally disengaged. So if a husband is usually rather engaging and this is a change, right, then that's a warning sign that something's going on in his health, potentially in his mind, but also potentially in just the way that he feels overall about where he's at in life. Apathy, a lack of care about anything, a lack of desire, lack of drive or motivation. This is a hallmark. We see this a lot with low testosterone. And so it's something that, again, going to the doctor, if you're going to do any kind of testing, nutritional testing, because you need nutrients to make testosterone, but also measure that baseline of that testosterone, because a lot of times you get a baseline and you start changing nutrition, you see that baseline come up, you know just how much that nutrition can affect the outcome. Irritability, as well as low sex drive. Healthy man will have a healthy sex drive. A man with heart disease and diabetes will have a poor sex drive. Central weight gain, so gaining weight around the midsection. This can be man boobs, right? So men that start to develop fat around the breast tissue. Men that are growing large love handles or having a kind of a what they classically refer to as a beer belly. These are all kind of signs of visceral fat storage. This is the type of fat that stores around organs. So it's the dangerous type of fat storage. It stores around the heart, stores around the omentum in the intestine. We don't want that central weight gain, okay? Now, it's possible a man can gain weight just by eating too many calories and not exercising enough over some time, but where we don't want to see it is that central storage. Bad breath. Bad breath is a hallmark of gut problems or gut dysfunction. Again, we see this a lot in men who drink a lot of alcohol, who overconsume caffeine beverages or overconsume coffee. So this may be a cue in for you to help him change his diet a little bit there. Swelling of the ankles is a big one too. This can be an early sign of weakening of the heart muscle. Which will lead to ultimately congestive heart failure. And the treatment generally for something like this is a diuretic. So the doctor gives blood pressure medicine, usually a diuretic like a thiazide diuretic or a Lasix. These drugs like this, the problem with them, again, doesn't fix why the ankles are swelling. It just gets rid of the water. But diuretics, unfortunately, increase the risk of developing congestive heart failure because they deplete vitamin B1. And swelling of the ankles may just be a vitamin B1 deficiency. So if you see that happening, if his socks are leaving major indentations when he's taking them off of his feet at night, if his toes look more swollen or his feet look more swollen, this is, again, a good opportunity for you to have a conversation. And then number 10, general aches and pains. If your husbands are complaining of the inability to move or to be physical or to get up and walk around or to get up and do things, and the problem is getting worse and progressing, this is a sign of inflammation, right? So this is a general. There's a lot of these symptoms, again, they're general, but they're early warning symptoms to look out for. But inflammation has a root cause. Generally, we don't just start hurting. We don't just start developing general aches and pains. This is typically an inflammatory process unless there's trauma. Now, if there's no trauma, if there's not like a broken bone or a strain or a sprain, or he wasn't working out and overdid it, then we're talking about inflammation as being the primary driver or culprit here. And if it's inflammation, that means, remember what inflammation causes. It causes every known chronic degenerative disease. It enhances them all. So it's going to accelerate the aging process. It's going to lead to an earlier demise of your man. And obviously you don't want that, or you wouldn't be watching this show. So look out for these 10 symptoms as kind of early warning signs, because these are going to be the things that happen before the heart attack a lot of times, or before a stroke, or before a major diagnosis. So these are the subtle things that can happen before your husband goes in to see the doctor. Because again, once that happens, once he makes his way into the doctor, if he's got any of those diseases, latently, this is going to be the solution. I promise you, that's what his doctor's going to want to do. And a lot of men trust their doctors. They just have an implicit trust. And that, again, that's not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing if the doctor's not creating viable solutions for your man to follow. If your doctor's just wanting to handicap him with more drugs that cause nutritional problems, then it's not going to do your husband any favors in the long term. So, ladies, I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that you can walk away from this not with anger about some of the things I said, but with action steps and with knowledge that you can have a meaningful and deep conversation with your men to help them understand how they can improve their health. And hopefully, many of you watching this, your husbands are already healthy and already doing a lot of the things that we talked about today. And so maybe this is just reinforcement for them. And thank you so much for tuning in to Dr. Osborne Zone. We'll see you in the next show.